Everybody good on the sound check? Everything good? Okay. All right. Thanks for coming out today. Good. Thanks for coming out. We have a couple significant announcements to make about the possible service cuts coming up. So we're going to hear today from SEPTA General Manager Scott Sauer and Chief Planning and Strategy Officer Jody Holton. And I'm going to turn it right over to our General Manager Scott Sauer to get started. Thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone. As you know, we are less than 3 weeks away now from the implementation of devastating service cuts due to the lack of a state funding solution for SEPTA and the other transit agencies across the Commonwealth. Today, we are releasing schedules that will go into effect on August 24th without a funding resolution. These schedules represent an across-the-board service cut of 20%. While we remain optimistic that a funding agreement can be reached in Harrisburg to avert these painful cuts, we are now at a point where we have to focus on making these changes as smooth as possible for our customers. And in order for us to ensure that we have our frontline personnel ready, along with a multitude of support and back-end functions that are necessary to ensure a safe and orderly transition, for a big change like this, we have to set a deadline for implementation. And that deadline is August 14th, next Thursday. What that means is that if August 14th comes and goes without a new state funding solution to address our structural budget deficit, we have to address it ourselves by moving ahead with these cuts that will start on August 24th. The 10 days between the deadline and the start of the new schedules is the bare minimum that we need to complete the multitude of tasks required to ensure that we can safely and efficiently transition service to the new timetables. This includes making sure accurate schedule data has been entered into our train signal systems, a critical safety issue. If the signal system has incorrect data, trains could be routed to the wrong tracks. We also have to provide several thousand bus and train operators and support staff with clear instructions for work assignments and ensure that vehicles and other equipment are in place. Time is also needed to prepare data feeds for the SEPTA app, external feeds, digital signage, platform announcements, and bus and train marquees. Inaccurate information can cause confusion for both customers and employees and lead to further service disruptions. Because of the unprecedented cuts that our riders are facing, I've tasked our planning and operations teams to collapse the schedule implementation timeline so that we could allow for as much time as possible so that a funding agreement could be reached before we have to move forward. Thanks to their efforts, we have extra time to work with, but the 14th is as late as we can go. To be clear, if there is not a funding solution by the 14th, we will have no choice but to move forward with the 20% service cuts starting August 24th. That means that even if an agreement is reached after the 14th, it will take us about 10 days from the time funding is approved to reverse course and complete all the schedule change tasks before we can restore full service. Time is of the essence. And the August 24th cuts are just the first of multiple steps we will be taking in short order to address our structural deficit. A 21.5% fare increase will follow on September 1st. We will move forward with an authority-wide hiring freeze in late September. A hiring freeze could easily lead to staffing shortages that impact our ability to restore service if new funding is eventually approved. And soon after, we will be moving toward another massive service cut on January 1st. When that goes into effect, nearly half of the service we operate today will be eliminated. We're hopeful that there will be progress on a funding solution in the coming days. These cuts will be devastating to SEPTA riders and our region as a whole. It's going to be harder for everyone to travel if we have to start shrinking the system. For now, we encourage our customers to review the schedules so that they know these service cuts could impact them starting August 24th. I want to ask Jody Holton, SEPTA's Chief Planning and Strategy Officer, to provide an overview of the cuts. Jody.
Thank you, Scott. These service cuts are unprecedented, and not just for SEPTA. No major transit agency has had to take steps this drastic. These are across-the-board cuts, so every rider will be impacted. There are some key dates for our schedules that customers should be aware of. For bus and metro services, new timetables go into effect on Sunday, August 24th. Except suburban bus routes 103 through 123, the 125, and the 126, as well as suburban metro rail, go into effect on August 25th, which is a Monday. And lastly, regional rail changes start on September 2nd, with a holiday schedule on Sunday, August 31st, and Monday, September 1st, which is Labor Day. This is typical of how we roll out schedules. SEPTA implements 3 seasonal schedule changes. Fall schedules changes always are timed to coincide with the first day of school for Philadelphia public school students. Typically, we are adding trips and capacity to accommodate students. With the potential for such a drastic change at the start of this school year, we are urging students and families to review these schedules so that they can find alternate travel options. As Scott noted, these cuts are the first steps we need to take to address SEPTA's structural deficit. The impact will be felt throughout the region. A total of 32 bus routes in the city and suburbs will be eliminated. An additional 16 routes will be shortened, and all routes will operate with reduced frequency. The B, the L, and trolley lines will have longer headways between trips. On regional rail, in order to maintain viable peak service during the morning and evening commutes, we had to make significant cuts to the midday, nighttime, and weekend service. Those weekend services have been gaining ridership, but would be reduced to running every 2 hours. Airport line would also be cut from 30 minutes to hourly service. We would also have to cut special event services such as the Sports Express trips to the stadiums. On a regular Eagles game, we operate 10 express trains. We will closely monitor service and attempt to make adjustments where possible. However, we will not be able to add service or provide substitutions for services that were eliminated. We urge customers to review the schedules that are now available online on SEPTA.org so that they can prepare for the cuts that occur later this month. These are examples of the schedules. You'll be able to identify the reduced service by the indicator at the top that says, this schedule reflects major service cuts made necessary due to the lack of funding. So when you look online, please find the schedules that show the red banner at the top. Those are the new schedules. In addition, we'll have people at key transit centers as we get closer to the date, handing out postcards with more detailed information about the route eliminations and reduced service. Thank you.
Take questions.
Okay, so these cuts will save about $5 million, right?
Yes.
Okay, for school, about $400 million in fare stabilization. Why the push to do these cuts now if you bring in what's going to happen at the state level when you have the money to hold off?
Yeah, that's a bit of a misnomer. The stabilization fund gets used every day, and it fluctuates every day. So while it may say 400 today, that drops precipitously throughout the year. And at the end of this current budget fiscal year, when we get to the very end, we are going to remove $113 million from our stabilization fund to close the budget gap to balance. So we can never zero that stabilization fund out. So we are going to pay for capital projects. We are going to pay for our day-to-day operating service while we wait for the funding that we get ordinarily from the state and from the federal government.
Yeah, but you wouldn't be zeroing it out. You're taking the $5 million from $100 million to forestall all these cuts that are going to
Right.
affect everybody in the region. Can't you just do that and wait for this at least a month to see if the state budget's going to be finalized and what you're going to get, and then move forward?
Yeah, I mean, we've been waiting 2 years for a solution from Harrisburg. So 1 more month, 1 more year, 2 more years. At some point, we have to make a decision that's in the best interest of our customers and the best interest of our employees to stabilize, if you will, the system. The customers have to know that cuts are coming or they're not coming. we can continue to kick the can down the road and wait and see what happens in Harrisburg. But at the end of the day, this is not a new scenario. This is not something we just started talking about recently. This is something we've been talking about for 2 years. And at some point, we have to make decisions that are in the best interest of our riders.
And Scott, does the setting of an August 14th deadline, does that move the urgency needle anyway, in any way? Have you heard from Senator Pittman or at the House and Senate leadership about the announcement of this deadline?
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken with many of the leadership in Harrisburg about this deadline, kind of gave them an idea that this was coming. I believe that the urgency already exists. I don't know that us setting a deadline, I don't know if that expedites anything. I know the leadership is working presently on a solution to the entire budget, which includes transit. And I just urge that that leadership continue to work, and hopefully we can get something done before this deadline.
How did you go about this when you had to make a lot of decisions to come up with these schedules? Did you go about it saying, let's create as little pain as possible, or did you want people to feel the pain to maybe push to get a solution?
No, we did not have any intent to inflict any pain whatsoever on our customers. Everything that we've done up to this point was out of necessity. The decisions we made to phase in service cuts were really made with the customer in mind. We wanted to, when we first put our budget together, before it was released publicly, we were trying everything we could to minimize the amount of cuts and the amount of pain, if you will, that would be inflicted on our riders. We couldn't balance the budget that way. So what we found out is a bit of a compromise. We did some smaller cuts in the beginning, small by the rest of the budget standards, but big by our customer standards. And then we brought in the rest in the second part of the year, and then we still have to dip into our stabilization fund to close the budget. We've tried everything we can to do this without cutting service or raising fares. And unfortunately, we've reached that threshold where we can't turn back.
Does this leave any black holes in certain neighborhoods or regions, or any complete, just no more SEPTA service in certain zip codes?
You want to talk about how we came to this?
Right. So we developed this 20% service cut with an eye to if there was any available alternate transit service. We looked at making sure that, if we eliminated a route, there might be another option for someone. We did eliminate routes starting with those that had 300 riders or less. So you either have alternate service or it's as minimum an impact as we could possibly manage. In addition, the rest of the cuts are sort of spread evenly across the entire region. So no county, no municipality should feel more cuts than any other. It should all be about 20% across the region.
What's the furthest amount of space that somebody has to travel from their old transit stop to their new transit stop? Is there any calculation on that?
I think this is where the tools on the website will be helpful, because we have so many riders, over 800,000 riders a day. So figuring out each one of their trips and how they'll be impacted is easier done by going on the website. By Friday, we will have a trip planner available, so you can put in the addresses that you want to go to and from and determine the best route. And it'll indicate whether or not you have to walk a substantial distance. Most services, like I was saying, if they had alternative service nearby, it's not that far. It's not that much farther of a walk. It just might be a longer wait for the service to come.
If the funding comes through after August 24th, and they put the hiring freeze, that will some of these services be brought back, or is there a certain date when that's just not going to be possible?
No, our intent is that if the funding is resolved to the extent that we need it to be resolved, in other words, we get the number that we hope for, we will put everything back. The point of we want to preserve service as much as possible. The issue now becomes timing, the timing of a resolution, and then the amount of whatever the funding is determined to be will determine how much or how quickly we can put the service back.
Senator Pittman and others have talked about accountability, transparency reform, safety reforms, and it's been talked about a lot. What is your response to that?
Yeah, Yeah, I've spoken a lot with Senator Pittman, Senator Picozzi, and others about exactly all those topics. I am completely aligned with what their goal is to make SEPTA safer and better, more reliable for our customers. We want to be held accountable. We are today. We're audited frequently by the state and federal government. So to be audited by someone else is not that much different than what happens today. So yes, I'm perfectly aligned with that goal. I believe we've done a lot of the things that we've been asked to do over the last couple years since we've been talking about this. We were asked to get safer. We have. We've reduced crime by record amounts over the last year and a half. We've been asked to get cleaner. We have. Our customers have noticed. Our recent customer satisfaction scores have all gone up in every category. So I think that we are a transit agency on the rise. It's a matter of whether or not funding comes to keep us going in that direction.
Scott, you said you're hopeful, you're optimistic that that funding's going to come, but you also said you've been waiting 2 years. So realistically, how optimistic can you be that this funding is going to come in May?
Well, I'm an optimistic person by nature, so I'll try to remain that way. What keeps me optimistic today is the fact that we're still talking about it. We're still talking about it. We're still watching our legislative caucuses talk about transit, talk about SEPTA. That's encouraging. I feel like, to speak to an earlier question, the urgency is there. I just feel like there's a lot of other things that the legislature is working on that impacts whether or not the funding comes and when. So I'll remain optimistic. I'll remain hopeful right up until the moment that I have to make these changes.
How does this all work with your staffing? How does it affect your overtime? Because you're not doing any layoffs with this reduced service, right?
That's right.
So how does this impact your overtime? Will people be working longer hours because?
Yeah, well, we certainly can't work people longer. Our hours are restricted in some cases by regulation, so we have to be careful with that. What will happen is we will shrink the workforce to match the size of the service that we deliver. So 20% less service does not necessarily equate to a straight 20% fewer staff, because while we can have maybe fewer people driving buses because we're not driving as many routes, we still have 1,200 buses in our fleet that have to be maintained. So mechanics still have to be on board to do that. We still have the same 200 and some odd miles of track that we have to maintain. We have the same signal systems. It's really on the service side. This is what's so complicated about our budget is we had to make such devastating cuts because we couldn't just take a few bus routes offline and save significant dollars. We still have lots of fixed capital infrastructure costs that we have to maintain. Our buildings and facilities, our track and structures, bridges, signals, all that still has to continue to be maintained. So we still need staff to do that. So while we will try to reduce where we can, there are going to be some areas that we'll have to maintain a certain level in order to be safe.
And what does it mean for your overtime?
Overtime, we've already reduced over the last several months. We've been trying to bring our overtime numbers down. Sometimes what that means is we will forego certain activities for the next day. And that may impact whether or not that particular bus or train goes out the next day because we've kind of delayed whatever is necessary to make it run. But that delay doesn't mean we ever do anything that's unsafe. We will just delay that vehicle or that asset from moving. And that's all that means.
I have an aside question about the Federal Transit Administration asking SEPTA now to report on the storage of its buses following the June 5th fire. Can I get your reaction on that and your response?
Yeah, I mean, we've been taking steps since that fire to remove those vehicles from the property. We've made it as safe as we can make it presently. We are working with an organization now to remove the batteries and get them off site. That is the obstacle that we have kind of in front of us. That's a hazardous materials disposal. So we're working to do that. Yes, we'll provide the Federal Transit Administration all the information that they need. We're still investigating the precise cause of the fire. But whatever the FTA needs to have to be informed on this, we will certainly provide them. So go ahead.
Follow
Yeah.
up on that. You're working with a company now to remove those batteries. Were those batteries on board the buses when these fires happened?
Yes, the batteries were on the vehicles. However, they were all disconnected. So we were working under the advice of Proterra. of the manufacturer on how to store them. We followed those instructions, and the fire occurred. That's why I said we're still trying to figure out why. But now we want to get the batteries completely off-site.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Scott, on these looming service cuts, just what's the message to riders today?
The message to riders is keep sounding the alarm. Let your voice be heard. Call your legislators. Tell them how important this is, because now it's real. Now it's real. We have real schedules. We have real cuts. This is going to happen. It's unfortunate that it's going to happen, but this is real now. So let your voice be heard and tell people how important this is to you. It's not just a SEPTA problem. I know that's what we're talking about because that's where we are, but this is the statewide. Every transit agency is going to be faced with this dilemma. If not already, then they will. So let your voice be heard. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.